So I'll start off with a couple of questions, and I'm sure people in the audience have comments or questions to make. It says at the end in the credits there, thanks to somebody for making the introduction that started the journey. What was the introduction and what was the journey? Because as you mentioned, it started off as an internet thing and then became a film in the end.
I think you're talking about the introduction for myself and Roger Evans, I believe, is that where it is? Basically, I moved to London from a place called Wales, which is, as you can see, which has got a very different sort of atmosphere and pace. I suppose big cities are much quicker, and when I moved to London, a little bit like the character Dixie, I was quickly overwhelmed by how busy it was and how expensive it was as well. I kind of ran out of money myself, really. But I had an idea, because I'd done some acting work in Wales, just to shoot some stuff on the streets in London. Illegally, I found out since, you can't do it. You're meant to have licenses and all sorts, but I shot them anyway. And I put them online. And that's what I did, that's where it started, little 5-minute short films. And it quickly picked up a lot of positive press in the UK and a following. Like sort of 30,000 people were following it quite quickly. So I realised then that the character had liked about him. I mean, it's a traditional classic story. It's a small town boy goes to the big city to try and realise his dreams. But I think that people associated with that character, you know, the idea of a guy that just keeps on trying until he finally gets there and gets to sort of, you know, realise what it is that he wants to do. So that was kind of where it started, and kind of, you know, you end up then in a film festival in Slovenia. It's fantastic, you know.
And again, reading the credits, music in films is a very expensive. You hear all sorts of people paying thousands of pounds. And it's no secret to say this isn't a big budget film.
No.
What was the story about getting so much music, and was Alan McGee, what was the involvement of Alan McGee, because obviously he plays a big part in the film?
Well, Alan McGee, the idea with Alan McGee was that he's very well known in the UK and the world, really. He ran a very well known record label called Creation that signed a band that became very big in the UK called Oasis. But he'd also signed other bands before that, Jesus and Mary Chain and Ride and Primal Scream. And when I originally had the concept for the Virals, I wrote down on a pad where I was living at the time in West London that I'd like Alan McGee to play the Svengali. Didn't know him, didn't know where he lived in the world. He could have been in Australia on a sheep farm, I don't know, you know, he could have been anywhere. But I found him through a mutual friend and approached him to be in the Virals, and he said yes. And so he's kind of been part of the journey all the way, and did bring it to credibility, I suppose. Musically, for the soundtrack, I thought I needed a soundtrack that was going to be good for a film, because it's about rock and roll. I also wanted a song from each decade, from the 50s onwards. I kind of sort of said, you know, that the 50s was the birth of popular culture, certainly in the UK, you know, the teenager and rock and roll. So I wanted a song from each decade, and I did that. But there's a band, obviously I think you know them, called The Who, who were very well known. And I asked for a song by The Who, and they said you won't get it. Because the way it works is a band can charge what they want to say a song. So they could charge you £500,000, which I think has happened recently with the Beatles and Mad Men. They asked for £500,000 for Tomorrow Never Knows. So you could charge what you want because it's your song. But I had to write to Pete Townsend, and I had to send him the clips of me and Martin Freeman in the record shop. And he came back and he said, you can have the song. And he gave it to us for the minimum amount that he could charge, which I think is £2,000, which works out about €3,000. Tiny. So once I got that, all the other bands that I asked for, you know, Dexys Midnight Runners, the Libertines, Jesus and Mary Chain, they would say they wanted, you know, £50,000, and I would say, I can't give you that, but I can give you 3. And they would go, well, no, we can't possibly do it for that. And I'd go, well, The Who are. And then they would say, okay. So I kind of managed to get all those bands because one big band said yes, because they seen it and liked it. And a very similar thing happened with the actors. Martin Freeman, who's doing The Hobbit, big star now, he did it for what in Britain they call equity minimum, which is equity or our actors union, and he did it for, I think he did it for £350, which is about €500. So you get those people, then once he did it, people like Vicky, bless them, they all had to do it for the same amount. So that's what I did. You know,
Did you do it for equity minimum, Vicky?
you did. So you kind of, I would say to any aspiring filmmaker that, if you ask, they can only say no. And there is something a little bit sexier about films for actors, and I'm an actor, it's true. So you do your TV and you do your theatre, but film tends to make you go, oh, okay, I don't know what it is. Vicky will back me up here. Movies have just got that magic about them, I suppose. So everybody that I asked to get in a film said yes. So I always say I've met many young, old aspiring filmmakers in the UK, and they all say to me, what was the secret? And there's no secret. You just ask, and if they say yes, then brilliant. And I absolutely say this to all filmmakers. Believe in yourself, because you've all got a story, and you'll be told no so many times, but just don't listen to them. Really don't listen to them. Make your movie, put it out there, and in the end, it does get made. It just does. Perseverance, like Dixie.
And as you mentioned, Vicky came into the... I was right in saying the character of Shell isn't in the viral, the precursor. Shell was created...
It's, who plays it?
Sally Phillips.
Sally Phillips, yeah. She's a bit older than me, I think.
So you had to kind of step in, and did you watch the virals, and did you get a kind of sense of the character, or did you say, right, this is a new Shell?
Yeah, it was a new Shell, really. Jonny sent me the virals and the script at the same time, which is a real rarity when you take any job, that you can, visualise what they're trying to do, because often they haven't made a viral or, unless they've done a pilot. So it was really handy having that. But Jonny did say to me, do what you want to do with Shell. And I remember sending him a picture of me with a bow on my head, bright red lipstick, and a little leather jacket, saying, I think she'd look like this. And he went for it. So that was good fun.
And John Hardwick, who sadly can't be with us today, the director of the film, what is his approach? Because I know he's done a lot of pop videos, worked with the biggest names, Arctic Monkeys and people like this. He'd done one film before this, but I think this was kind of the biggest sort of feature film that he'd made. What was John's approach as a director, and how did it differ from, like, you've done a lot with Shane Meadows and Stephen Knight and people like this? What was the Hardwick touch?
The Hardwick touch for me was, he did just let you loose, so to speak, and Jonny and John had worked very hard together in making sure that, because we were making a comedy, to make sure we had fun throughout the shoot, which sounds simple enough, but sometimes can be hard, because shooting long days, long hours, with complications of locations, etc., it can be hard, but, John was very relaxed, he was very easy to be around, there was never any tension on set. And, the director plays a big part in that. So for me, John was just an absolute joy to work with. He was very sure about what Jonny wanted out of the script, out of the characters, and completely followed Jonny's vision on that.
I think for me, and some directors work in different ways, and that's fine, whatever works for them, but simplicity is the key. If you can clear the mind of an actor, so that they just worry about nothing except the performance of that film and what it is they're going to do, then you've got a really good chance then, So once I said to actors, I wrote a lot of the parts for actors, so there was very little casting, only 1 or 2 parts, but once we did cast, I kind of said to the actors then, that's it now, you're in, don't worry, just, you just enjoy it and relax, and that was kind of like what I wanted to try and do with Svengali, so it was kind of, they were made to feel that, the only thing that they had to do, and even with lines, I had some actors, for argument's sake, who were very particular and wanted the script and wanted to stick to the script, which was fine, and and then other actors would go, can I move with it? And I go, absolutely, as long as we get to the point that we need to get to, dramatically, then that's not a problem, and if you're acting with someone like Martin Freeman, it's a bit like, to use a boxing analogy, you're going in the ring with Muhammad Ali, do you know what I mean? It's like he's going to be very good. So, you know, you had to be on your toes, you know, in that sense. But other actors who have got really big names in the UK would have said to me, I will stick to this script and that's it, you know, that's what I want to do. And that was fine as well. So it was a really good way to work, actually. And everybody works differently. It's just about making them feel as comfortable as they possibly can.
And obviously the film is a kind of affectionate film in some ways about the music industry. You know, it's presenting the world of pop in a, you know, in a it's not one of those like That'll Be the Day or Stardust, which is like a, you know, kind of depressing vision of the world of pop. Yeah, good film. What was the reaction of people within that world when they saw the film? Did they say this was like a fairy story, or did they say this is actually what it's like, or what?
Well, the reaction from people in the music industry has possibly been the best of all sort of, I don't know, spheres of the arts, in that they've gone, because it's a hyper-reality world. Vicky always laughs at me saying this, but it's the only industry in the world where bad behaviour is actively encouraged, you know, rock and roll. So you kind of like, there's so much basis for comedy in that for me. So loads of people have said to me, you know, the little Mancunian is Nathan McGough, who was the Happy Mondays manager. And I'm like, well, I did meet him, you know, and Matt Berry's character is based on Chris Bracknell, who ran the Island Records. He just changed him from Jamaica to South Africa because he used to wear flip-flops and stuff. So there's lots of stuff that I kind of used from pop music history and put it in the film, and all the stuff in Britain now that you have to do when you're in a band. You have to get on Soccer AM, you have to get a Radio 1 session, you have to get on, there's a kind of a pattern to get made, and I think the thing with England especially is that London is still the capital of rock and roll. This goes back to the days of the Beatles and the Stones. So those images that people see of Soho and those areas and Maida Vale are still kind of like, you know, where the roots of rock and roll. I mean, there's American places, like obviously there's Tin Pan Alley in New York, and there's Nashville and Memphis, but I do think that of all them, for some reason, because of punk and then, you know, Britpop and indie, London seems to have a certain resonance about it, that, you know, you go there and you kind of go, wow, you know, you can see, you walk around London, there's always a blue plaque which says like Jimi Hendrix and Keith Moon drank you know, something, you know, there's all those kind of stories that sort of just are there in London, and I don't know why that is, but I just think it's still the capital of rock and roll, really.
But both of you don't live in London. I mean, I know that because I stayed in your house recently. But you live near Nottingham, and maybe Vicky speak a little bit about Nottingham as because you know people know the films of Shane Meadows, but Nottingham seems to be kind of on the rise. You don't have to live in London to have a successful career as a filmmaker or an actor or whatever.
No, I really don't think you do now. I do remember when I was 16, I got my first agent, massive agency. I'd just done a room for Amir Brass with Shane Meadows, and my agent said, you must you know, move to London. To which I said, well, I can't afford it, for one. You know, I'm only 16, and I never did. And, you know, there was times where I struggled. And me and Jonny did live in London for about a year, about 2 years ago. And it's great. You know, you do see more people, and you do sort of go to the events and all that kind of stuff. But I live in Nottingham with Jonny, and we live very close to Shane Meadows and Stephen Graham and Paddy Considine, all, you know, top actors, live very local. And I just don't think it's important anymore. Nottingham is, yeah, it's definitely becoming, I don't know, it used to have quite a bad reputation, just like any city does, I think, for a period of time. But Jake Bugg, who's sort of quite new to the music scene, he's doing really well, and he's definitely put it back on the map. And Shane Meadows, you know, continues to make incredible cinema and TV, and yeah, he's living in Nottingham, as are we.
We might try to get Shane here next year.
Yeah.
We're coming next year, I know that.
Does anybody have a question for John or Vicky? If they do, wave your hand around in the air. Because, yeah, at the back there.
How much of your own story is part of the film, actually? I mean, how did you manage to get that into the movie itself, your own background as a musician? You mentioned you were in the band yourself.
I was, yeah. It's a really good question. And, you know, when I watch the film now, I realise every time I watch it more than I ever thought. In so much as there's little things I notice, like he runs out of money very quickly, which is what happened to me in London, you know. Literally, I think I bought a pint and I got a taxi somewhere, and I spent like £500 in London. That's what it was like, you know, it was so expensive. But there's obviously these things in there that, where I'm from in South Wales was was a mining area, industrial area, but all those mines are gone now. You know, like you know, the world is changing, and you know, industry changes. You know, I suppose this happened in Slovenia and places where, and his father, the character in there, where he says, you know, I worked underground as a young man, and I realised that my father worked underground and my grandfather, and obviously it was autobiographical. The band stuff, absolutely, because when I was in a band, we behaved really badly, looking back, you know, and I'm a bit embarrassed really, because the manager of our band, whose name is Dixie, who's become well known in the UK because of the film. He's had articles done about him. He sells double glazing windows now, but he's Dixie. And he loves it because he was such a lovely man, you know, and we were just a bunch of little bastards a lot of the time, you know. Why aren't we on the front cover of the NME? And, you know, why aren't fucking, you know, it's just hard work, you know. And
What was the band called?
the Pocket Devils. We had
Any Pocket Devil fans?
we had number 60, we got number 67 in the charts. We never cracked the top 40. That was the thing. So, but I knew that world very well. And our local rivals were called the Stereophonics. We became massive. So, because I was sort of after 6 months going, why the fuck are they playing Wembley? You know, they were just a great band. You know, so I kind of used a lot of that in my head, where I was able to say, you know, I knew how bands behave, how they mothered. You know, and Dix used to do those things, like he'd hire the van to pick us up. He'd be setting the equipment up while we'd have a pint. Our equipment, just bizarre things. He'd get in a horse, or the horse of the taxi was, there's a village in South Wales called Mountain Ash where I filmed that, which I love. And about 10 years ago, a guy walked past, but he had a donkey. And somebody went, all right, Shrek. And that was his nickname, because he had a donkey. And I kind of went, oh, he's got a donkey. And it really stuck in my head. So I thought I would put that in a film. And where I'm from in Wales, that's the bit they all love. They all clap and cheer because they all know about this character that walks around with a donkey who's in the film. So that was semi-autobiographical, certainly. But a lot of me is in there, more than I kind of realised, I think, at the time. But and then you watch it back and you go, okay. And I loved London. Me and Vicky were talking. I lived in London for 6, 7 years, and I did love the city. It's got a great atmosphere, it's got great energy, it's always busy, it's unbelievable. I mean, on a Monday night in London, and so it's packed all year round, Neil will tell you. But you do run out of money very quickly because you need to be out all the time, that's the problem. But it is an amazing city, and it does suck in a lot of interesting people, no two ways about that, filmmakers, musicians, you know, nutters, hobos, a lot of people. But it is something about that city, the energy of it is really, really interesting, and it does, you know, flick out, you know, amazing things as well.
Is the virals continuing? Is the story going to continue, or do you feel the story of Dixie and Shell that's it, and then?
I think that's it. I was flirted with a bit, wasn't I, by some television companies, maybe a bit like what happened with This Is England, of doing a series then after of what happened to the band after they were signed and things. Like, I would know what to do, I think, with them. I think I'd definitely start with Horsey managing them and can't control them, and so he's told, get Dixie back, you know, so he's got to persuade him to come back. But I haven't really thought about it. I'm doing another film at the moment, so I'll see what happens. But I've been really pleasantly surprised by how much, you know, people have liked it and wanted to know what happened. But when I originally wrote it, I just think he's going home, you know.
Another question, perhaps? I know that Vicky, you're working. That Shane Meadows has got a new project coming. Maybe can you give a little hint about what that's going to be?
Yeah, we're going to do This Is England 1990. So we did the film 10 years ago. And we did This Is England 86 and then 88, and we're looking at finishing the sort of, but I think that's going to be a full stop. So we're going to film later this year. So I'll get my Doc Martens back on. And whatever haircut he chooses to give me.
And what is the next project from you, Jonny? That you mentioned?
Yeah, I've done a script called Schemers, which is set in late 70s Scotland, and that's been commissioned. That's got the money to make it on the back of saying, Carly, if you do something and it, you know, people, it makes a bit of money, they let you do another film then. You're allowed to do another one. So I'm doing that one. I'm going to direct that one as well in end of the summer in Dundee. When I said this in Scotland, in Glasgow, I'm doing a film in Dundee. Everybody groaned. Oh my God. Apparently Dundee's a bit of a shithole, so I don't know.
I'm sure it's got its nice part.
Yeah, I like Dundee, I like it.
But this film has, had international exposure and success. And it played in New York in CBGB's. What was the story with that?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good lesson for me actually, because it played one night and it was great, big crowd. But then it played really early the next morning. I mean, really early. Vicky was brilliant. About 9 o'clock in New York, and I had to get up and take the little disc. So I go over to the guy and I say, "Oh, here's the disc." And I go, "Is anybody in?" He said, "No, man, there's no one in. But don't worry, somebody might turn up. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Thinking. So I come out to Vicky and I went, "There's nobody in there. There's nobody watching the film." So I had the option of going back, or I could have got somebody from the festival to collect the disc. But I said to Vicky, I'm going to go back, because he was a nice guy, and he took the time to say to me, "Never mind," and all that. So I went back to see him. So we're having a cigarette outside, waiting for the film to finish so I can go in and collect it. And about 10, 15 people came out, so they turned up. One of them was a writer for the New York Times. So it just goes to show, doesn't it? And she said to me, "Oh, I love the movie." And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And she does a very influential blog there called the Bowery Boogie. And she went, "Oh, I love the movie." And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And she went, "Yeah, blah, blah." And she went, "I'm going to write something about it." And she did. But it was only the fact that I turned up. And I could have said, so this is a good lesson that even when there's nobody there, go along, because there might be one person in the audience that could make a difference. And Shane Meadows was a good friend of ours, said the other day that he had a retrospective in France, didn't he, of his films. And on the third night, nobody was there. This is for Shane Meadows. But he didn't care. And the 3 people that turned up, he said, "Come on." And they all watched it. And afterwards, he went out for a few beers with them, and they loved it. So, you never know who's in the audience. It was a good lesson for me.
Wonder who's in the audience today.
Yeah, one was in the audience today.
If anybody has a last question, put your hand up. Otherwise, we have to get the cinema ready for our Galician special. You are all captains with some short films at 6:30. Please do stick around for that. Another question at the back. Yes.
Why are they going home now?
Why are they going home? Was the question.
Another very good question. There was a very good film made in Britain, which was a big hit, which I liked, but it was called Billy Elliot. I don't remember it. Yeah. And I'm from a working class lad, as me is. And I just thought the message was really interesting. It was basically, you need to get out of that area for a better life. You need to go to London. So there was a kind of, it stuck with me that why was it better for him to leave his family and a loving background and relationship and move to London? Why did he have to do that? So I wanted to flip that and actually show you that he had everything that he wanted at home. He had a loving family, a beautiful girlfriend, and all these great things going on. And so sometimes you can chase something, and what you've got and what you love and what's important is right underneath your very nose. So I wanted to show that actually sometimes you can realise the best things are right in front of you, whereas you're constantly trying to search for something else. So that was the idea with that he kind of went home and back to the loving bosom of his family. That was the idea of that. Probably the greatest message in rock and roll, as we all know, is that all you need is love, by the Beatles. And I thought of that for the film. It was they always say to me, in anything you write, if you know your messages from the start, the basic message, then you've got a good chance. And my basic message with this whole film was that love is the most important thing. Love is the most powerful thing in the universe, and that's all you actually need, really, is love. So that was me. I've been a bit of a fucking hippie with it, but that's my
Well, I'm very pleased that the film has been a success with the audience because, just because I like something, sometimes my taste is a bit strange, but I think I knew this one would
Your taste is great, Neil. I love you.
This is the only screening of the film, but the film is available on DVD, so, you can go on some website and get it and give it to the person you love, or perhaps for Christmas, the idea of it. So please join me in thanking our terrific guests today, Vicky McClure and Jonny Owen of Spengalli.
Thank you very much. And a bit of good news, it looks like we can stay for another 2 days. Thank you very much.